This is a policy. So even if we agree on the date in violation of the policy, then we could be subject to having a meeting that wasn't properly called to approve the curriculum. So I think what you're hearing is the president's willing to discuss a date, but she doesn't want to be bullied into having a date.
There's no.
Excuse me, I have the floor.
Okay.
There's no bullying.
Excuse me, Mrs. King.
Okay, excuse me.
There's no bullying.
Let
Excuse me.
Mrs. Sullivan finish, Ms. King.
I just want to state, in case the public can't hear me, that Mrs. King is laughing at my comments.
There's no bullying.
She's laughing at me.
Because there's no bullying.
And she's talking when I'm talking, and I have the
Mrs.
floor.
King,
There were 3 other people who
Mrs.
said
King,
something.
Mrs. King, can you
cannot single
please?
me out. That is bullying.
Mrs. King,
That goes against diversity and inclusion.
Mrs. King, can you please?
So,
You're out of order.
under the policy,
Mrs. Sullivan,
we have to
continue.
have rules, and we have to follow rules, because people have expectations. And especially when it's something that's controversial like this, it's really important to follow the rules. The rules say we have to be presented with a petition. If they want to present a petition, board secretary can take the petition, give it to the president, she'll schedule another meeting. That's what it says. And you've heard what our president says. She's willing to schedule the meeting. But if we don't give you all notice properly of what's going to happen, then how can you participate, really, whether you're yay or nay? This is my point. We have to have some type of observation of the rules. And I respectfully request that Mr. Lamb rule on the motion under policy 161 for the section that he just read. Thank you.
Ms. Sullivan and board members, it's my interpretation of the policy that we should vote on Mr. Kinney's motion, and if that motion passes and it's followed up by a signed petition of the majority of the board, then we would proceed with the meeting.
Even with the date in?
Even with the date in, I don't see any
Education Committee, where we said, look, we'll try to find another date. Let's talk to people now and see what we can do. And the bottom line is we're going into this stall tactic here because we don't want to do it before the beginning of the year. Feeling me that we have to make sure our students and our teachers have time to react, regardless of what the vote is, yes or no. They still have to have time to react. There's no reason why we can't find, and we're asking for a separate meeting for this because we couldn't do it this evening. Because you asked it not to be done this evening. So, and you put out, I'm still at the floor, Ms. Sullivan. So you also put out on the agenda, putting under there, no formal action will be taken. So quite honestly, we could have walked in a motion to this meeting and said we're moving it out of no formal action into formal action, but that really wouldn't have been fair to the public.
Correct.
Right? And that is why we're not doing that this evening. It's just not right to the public. So I understand, we want to work with you. We're asking this to be done before the beginning of the school year. And we're also trying to be respectful of the board members, and we know many of them are away next week with family obligations, college returns, things like that. So what I would ask this evening is there's a motion on the floor, okay? We've gotten a ruling on it. I would ask, with all due respect, is to please rule on the motion that we go forward and take a vote on the motion, and we have a date on there, and if that date works for the 6 people, that is majority, and we hold the meeting for the vote. So thank you for the time.
Thank you, Mr. Carroll, and shame on you because you know differently. And you know we couldn't have voted tonight based on Mr. Fogarty's office that said that the public needed at least a meeting in place before new curriculum stuff was started. And we had this discussion, and shame on you. I am fine with the 30th as a date. I will say it again. I had no problem in having a meeting, an actionable meeting on curriculum before the school year. Shame on you.
Can I be recognized?
Mrs. Sullivan,
Wasn't it Mr. Fogarty's advice at the last board meeting that we needed to give public the time to look at the curriculum and we weren't going to vote on it tonight because he was actually shocked that we don't post our curriculum on the website contrary to what Mr. Carolyn said, that there's varied practice, our own board counsel, a partner at the firm, with all due respect, there's an associate at the firm tonight who's been out of school since 2017. Mr. Fogarty, who was here a week ago or 2 weeks ago, said that it should be posted and there should be enough time for people to actually consider it and review it. Last Wednesday, I had my meeting with Mr. Sutherland, and I noticed that there were 11 courses missing from the website. I understand what he's saying, that curriculum was due to him on the 17th, but at 3 a.m. in the morning, those 11 courses were uploaded, and that worried me. That worried me because there was no notice critiqued and looked at. So I leave it to you in the public. Do you want more time to look at this?
Point of order. Point of order. Can I be recognized? May I be recognized?
Robert, what's your point of order?
I don't think anybody had an objection to the curriculum being pulled from tonight's agenda.
No.
We are proposing an additional week for the public to review it, which is why we're asking for a meeting next week. All we are asking for is a date certain for the meeting, so that if there are differing views from certain members of the board or the board president, that there is not essentially an attempt to suppress the meeting until a time when it's no longer relevant. So the attempt by a few members of this board, which is becoming more and more clear, to control the whole agenda of what's happening on this board is at this point intolerable. And frankly, if this motion is not, if this meeting is not set, then perhaps what we need to do is to consider more dramatic action, which could include replacing the president. So I don't want to go there, but if you're
That's outrageous.
If you're going to stand on procedure and tell us that we can't have a vote on a curriculum matter.
No one said that.
Well, I'm giving you my opinion, and I have the
Mr.
floor.
Budo, calm down.
If somebody is
Mr.
telling us
Budo,
that we
please
can't
let
have a
him.
vote on curriculum before, then when the majority of the board wants that, then that is something it's being controlled by a minority of the board, which is not fair.
Can I ask,
Hold on.
I asked to be recognized.
Mr. Budo, hold on. Again, Mr. Fortunato, I take offense at your accusation that anybody on this board, especially me, is trying to delay this vote. I will say it again, and stop saying otherwise.
Then set the meeting. What more do we need to do?
I will accept the meeting, but I want everybody on this board to be clear that my intent overall and always was to do a meeting specifically for curriculum, and that was stopped at every opportunity. So now you're afraid that we're not going to pass it before the school year? Shame on you. That was never my intent. That was never what I said, and every single person on this board knows that. So stop it with the accusation.
I am looking at your actions, Philomena, not your words. Put the meeting on and let us vote on it.
I want the meeting. I wanted to be able to discuss the dates. To Mr. Budo's point, who can be available for that date? And Mr. Lamb can attest that we've been exploring dates from a week and a half ago. We spent a Saturday together trying to figure out the best day. So I will accept the motion with an apology. Apologize. Every single one on this board knows that I've been trying to do this curriculum properly and for the public to participate before the school starts. So apologize.
Philomena, I think you've been working.
Apologize. I want an apology. Mr. Carolyn, you know. Dan Sutherland, you know. Everybody knows. Mr. Kinney, you know.
I don't think we're arguing. What I wanted to try to do here, guys, is I wanted to try this. Can you guys hear me okay now? Sorry, I don't want you to miss out on the show. What I wanted to try to do here is get to the point of deciding a date, okay? I've put a stake in the ground with the date intentionally. That's fine. Let's talk about it, though. We have to communicate more, and instead of slinging arrows at each other, guys, we've got to work together, okay? And Philomena,
Exactly.
I know you've been working on this. I know you've thrown out some dates. We've talked about it at the Education Committee. I don't think anybody is is arguing that, who's at least on the Education Committee, okay? So let's just put that one to bed.
I'd like to.
But secondly, let's get past sniping and let's get to a point of action. We've got to move on this. If there's people that that don't want to move on this, they can vote it down. I get that, but let's move to action on it. That's the intent of the discussion that's going on with this motion.
I agree. And
That-
if you could remember too, in the Education Committee, I offered the 30th and the 31st, and your response, Mr. Kinney, personally was, that's not fair to Mr. Carolyn because he'll be away. And I said, okay, we'll move off that date.
To that point, it's now, I totally agree with what you said, and I would validate that. And that's why I didn't think it would be such an issue for me to put the 30th on to the motion.
It's not
That's
an
it.
issue. The
That's it.
issue is that you're.
I'm trying to meet you guys in the middle.
It's not the date is not the issue. The issue is that you're trying to create a false narrative.
Gavel, please.
I think it's you trying to create a false narrative. That's what I object.
I'm not. Okay? So
All right. Okay.
So there's a motion on the table.
Yes, Ms. LaForgia, unless you want more board discussion, if you do,
No,
we
I
can
do-
if not, we can vote on the
We
motion.
can vote on motion.
I have one more comment with
Mr.
regard to what Mr. Fortunato said. What you
Mr.
said was
Buda.
absolutely wrong. Absolutely wrong. My point of order was based on an improper petition. A petition which, by the way, do you have?
I'll give it to you right now. I mean, Jesus Christ, come on, let's just move.
Okay. Let's just move on.
But, no. To that point, I'm fine with having a date. My point of order was to do it correctly. But obviously, that's not how we want to do it. And Mr. Fortunato, what you said was absolutely incorrect. I could vote yes, I could vote no. That's my prerogative. I'm not going to question how you're going to vote. Don't question how I'm going
I'm
to vote.
just saying, let's bring it to a vote.
Okay,
You
I
don't
know.
want to bring it to a
Let's-
vote.
Ms. LaForgia,
And
Yes.
the only one
Okay,
slinging
no.
hours here, by the way, is you, Mr. Fortunato, and you, Mr. Carolyn.
All right.
So let's move
stop.
on.
Okay.
Ms.
Mr.
LaForgia,
Lamb.
if I
Mr. Lamb.
may, if I may read the motion,
And please tell who the names on the petition.
I will read the petition, and then we can have the vote. Presentation to call a board meeting. The petition is to request that the board meeting be called for August 30th, 2021 at approximately 7 p.m. The purpose of this meeting is to review and act on the district's revised new curriculum for the 2021-22 school year as follows. That is followed by a list of all of the courses that are also listed on tonight's agenda, approximately 116 courses, but I won't read them individually. And then it's followed by the signatures of the board members, and it is signed by Ms. Koulikortis, Mr. Sededicato, Mr. Fortunato, Mr. Kinney, Ms. King, and Mr. Carolyn. So it is signed by 6 board members, a majority of the board. So
let's
based
have a
on
vote.
that, we can go forward.
Have a vote. Mrs. Angela, if you could do a roll call.
Mr. Carolyn.
Yes.
Mr. Fortunato.
Yes.
Mr. Kinney.
Yes.
Ms. King.
Yes.
Ms. Koulikortis.
Yes.
Mr. Sededicato.
Yes.
Ms. Sullivan.
Abstain?
Mr. Budo.
No.
Ms. LaForgia.
No. Can we just resume the board comments after Mrs. King, Judith, and John Budo and I? Can we just resume?
Mr. Kinney, I don't know if he was finished.
Oh, are you done with your board comments as far as curriculum?
Yeah, that was enough
Okay.
discussion for me. Thank you, though.
Thanks. Okay, Mrs. King?
Thank you. We must always take sides. Neutrality helps the oppressor, never the victim. Silence encourages the tormentor, never the tormented. There may be